Jo, welcome to the podcast. It's super exciting to have you on. I've secretly looked up to you for some time. Success you've had as a coach speaks for itself, but also you played elite cricket in a time that was vastly different to what it is today. Before we get into the world of culottes and double hundreds, I'd love to explore what life was like for you when you were growing up.
Well, I grew up in a rather large family, so there was five of us. One of my brothers was born with a disability. So I think very early on, I focused very much on things that I could do and that we all have strengths, and he has strengths as well. But can I tell you, it was pretty competitive with my other two brothers that were older than me, and also a sister as well. So I thought I had the best of both worlds, to be honest, because I had my sister there to play netball with, but I had my brothers there to play footy and cricket with, and just some of the battles that we had. We weren't traditionally growing up in the backyard. Ours was the front yard, so something a little bit different. So we had the front yard, but we also had this enormous park out the front of our house growing up, and it just makes me smile even just thinking about, being outside and having this playground, having this big space to play. We'd get Dad's roller and take it onto the park and roll a wicket out and get all the kids in the area and the community to join in. And, it was just so much fun. So, I felt like, we had our front yard, we had the park, and then I had a really good friend of mine, Nigel, down the road, and we would meet and play cricket in the holidays, and we'd actually play in his backyard. So I felt like I covered everything: front yard, backyard, parks. The only thing getting to his place, I had to get past this pack of dogs, 6 dogs, that would escape out of their backyard and come at you from all angles. Actually, I probably should admit that these dogs were Chihuahuas, so the smallest dogs in the world. But I always felt like I'm glad I had the courage to get past those dogs, because the things that you learn about the game in the backyard or the front yard or on the park are just some of the most crucial things, and you make up your own fun. And that's what I really loved about being a kid was, it wasn't structured. It was just do whatever you wanted. You could have 2 innings, 1 innings. You could have 3 and you're, 3 ways of getting out and you're out, or first way you're out, or you could just make it up as you went. So it's so sort of rewarding looking back on my childhood and all of those little areas. And it's just, fun comes to mind.
That's brilliant. Firstly, I'm impressed your dad had a roller. That's not an everyday thing. And secondly, they say you can't buy experience, and having the experience of front and backyard cricket, I think, is something that we can all dream of. And maybe you did have a competitive advantage over everyone else, which explains a lot. But you can see in your face, you just completely light up when you talk about your childhood and that fun, that just like the battles and the competitiveness of it as well, I'm sure, with a few boys around you as well. Did this sort of carefree fun nature stay with you as you started to progress into more competitive cricket, whether it was at state or national level?
I think it did, almost to my detriment at times, because, I think very early on I was probably tarnished a little bit with the party girl, liked having fun, liked being around my friends. And, cricket was like a secondary for me, to be honest, because I didn't start playing until I was 21. I'd played a lot of indoor cricket before that, and it was sort of that fun factor, indoor cricket for me. I could play with my brothers because I was in a mixed team, and I played in a girls only one that had my sister in there as well. So I had this sort of experience of being able to I suppose experiment and have that fun factor. But then you start to become, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, so what am I willing to do? And I think that point for me came when I was representing South Australia, and we were playing in our which was like a WNCL, but it wasn't called that back then, so the Women's National Cricket League. And a couple of my friends actually said, I think you're going to make the Australian team. And I sort of at first thought, what is there an Australian team? I didn't even know. Now I'm 21 at this stage. 23, sorry. I started when I was 21. I was 23 at this stage. And I just went there, like I said, still having fun. And when the Australian team got picked back in those days, you went to these tournaments and then you had to fly straight away off to your tours. So here's me, I've packed, summer gear, we're in Australia. Next minute, I'm on a flight to New Zealand and I've got no jumpers and clothing-wise, it just wasn't to be. But, I realised after that first year was sort of a little bit of it wasn't something I inspired to do, funnily enough. But when I was actually there, I think I then started to realise that, maybe I need to take this a little bit more serious, but you still want to keep that fun factor along the way. And I think most people would probably describe me as a team player, and that's how I like to coach as well. I coach a team. It's not... You coach a team of individuals, yes, but it's about a team first mentality for me. And that was something that, I wanted to make sure in my transition into coaching that's what I did.
That's fascinating. And I think it's a vastly different approach that you see in the majority of girls today, in that today, like in a good way, Big Bash just comes through, and around the world you see the 100 and it's like you can be a professional. And I literally had 10-year-old coming in asking if they could bat 3 times a week and fix up their technique, and I was like, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And it's like, what happened to just like, I'm probably in between the two. Growing up, like I was fairly similar. I was like, oh, playing cricket, oh, there's women and there's a state team here. I had no idea. I've just come from Zimbabwe and I'm just happy to be playing. But I hit that stage really quickly where it was like, oh, apparently you have to train hard. And then I probably went too far the other way. So in your coaching career now, though, are you dealing with a lot more girls that are coming through a little bit too serious or too early, or overthinking it and have lost that fun and enjoyment factor?
Yeah, look, it's probably something when I was with the New South Wales team through that professionalising part, I really sort of noticed that, wow, everyone's put all their eggs in this one basket of being a professional athlete. And it was quite sort of significant. You were seeing the players a lot more. We were obviously worried about things like, they're going to be training more? Is there going to be injuries? We've got to sort of be able to make sure we're catering for the players as well. And because they were the first to be professionalised in New South Wales, there was probably this tag on the back of them too that, hey, we have to make sure that we do this right, sort of thing. And I think what was really important, I was very lucky. I had a big team of people around me. So, I think what we sort of endeavoured to do, along with the players and the leadership there, was unreal. That we needed to make sure that we were still doing those things off the field really well. And also, I suppose making sure that people had things outside of cricket. And, it's almost one of the first questions you sort of ask players, oh, what do you do outside of cricket? And a lot of times with our Australian players, it was just blank silence, to be honest, because I found that, it was just all cricket. So you really challenge them without them even knowing it, to think, hey, what do I do? And, look, a lot of times people relax in different ways, like they might be playing golf, or they might go and have a coffee. That seems to be sort of a big one, or they're relaxing and walking on the beach, or with being around their family, because, as cricketers, as you would know, when you're in bubbles now and all these sorts of things, and even pre that, you say goodbye to your family and you don't see them in cricket seasons. And that was even the same for me playing in an amateur type era. However, I think we really trained like professionals, but yeah, it's the well-being of players is absolutely 100% up there. And it's, it's that empathy I think that coaches have to have too, that, hey, we're trying to get the best out of this athlete and we want them to be able to perform on the field. However, they need life balance and things that they're going to do after cricket. And, New South Wales had a fantastic setup with welfare management for those types of things too. So we were always doing, some sort of fun activity, like, I think, like drawing leadership, say, for example. Actually, the girls might not say that's fun, but it was something a little bit different than sitting around in a group and talking about it.
Oh, that's brilliant. I really like that idea. So you mentioned when you were growing, well, not growing up, but when you were in the Aussie team as well, you guys, because it was amateur, you'd often go away for a long period of time, play a series, and then come home. But when you come home, you're not exactly coming home to more training and more series. You've got a job outside the game, or you've got all sorts of things going on. But when you were away, did the leaders and the leadership that you have, how did they manage that weird dichotomy of you're currently fully professional, fully in it, fully taking seriously, but also this is not your day job?
Yeah, you know, a lot of players left their jobs, you know, and I always had this gratefulness because I worked for the SA Cricket Association, so I always felt that, you know, this is great. They were very supportive, but you know what, I had to use up all my holidays as well. So, and a lot of the girls were in the same boat, where you would, you know, go to work, you'd go away on a tour, and then you'd come back to work and you'd feel like you haven't really had this break that normal people get when they're working in their jobs. So I think, you know, that side of it was you know, difficult for some players, but for me, I just, you know, the other part was that I was working in our family business too, as well, for a period of time. So, you know, if your dad's not going to give you time off, I don't know who will. so I never had those struggles, but I always really felt for those players. Like, you know, how do you go financially being able to, you know, survive this? But you know what? The passion and the love that you had for the game, it just outweighed anything. You know, in some faces, like, we look at it and we think we're sort of glad we didn't have Facebook around that time too. And that we weren't as known as what people were. But it's, you know, the most rewarding thing is just seeing where the game has gone to. That's been the most rewarding for me, and being a part of it too, and still a part of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's really interesting. We actually had Pete Clark, who's the Australian cricket psychologist, on a couple of weeks ago. And he spoke a lot about the fear response when you are actually playing for your finances, or you have given up so much outside of the game to play today. And it's really hard to then either retain that fun and enjoyment of the competition, or simply just concentrate on the ball that's in front of you, or the job that's in front of you. Like there's so much noise outside of the game, and like, irrelevant of which area you've played in, I think there's still noise and there's still different challenges that come about it. How were those ideas of passion and fun, and you just loved it so much, the keys to helping you actually execute as a player?
Oh, look, I think so. But I also had this, I don't know, this determination to want to be the best that I could. And I also wanted other people around me to be the best they could. And I played in such a fantastic era. I mean, Chris Matthews, Belinda Clark, Lisa Kitely, Karen Rolton, you know, the list goes on.
It's ridiculous.
You know, I pinched myself. Like, you know, it was actually a perfect day when Belinda made her 200 in one day cricket, and I was batting up the other end, and I just thought, you know what, I'm the luckiest person in Australia, or in the world actually, luckiest person in the world to be just experiencing this magic from such a leader. And I think, you know, I mean, when you look at where we sort of all are in our lives, we've all still been very driven in the cricket world, and we're still putting our hands up to do things. We're still in there helping others achieve what needs to be done. And, you know, I look back on it so fondly that I was around such a great group of people. You know, we had a brilliant coach in John Harmer for 10 years. The stability that you can get with having a coach for a long period of time, very rare, very rare. Coaches are in and out these days, but to sort of have him for that 10-year period, his background was in biomechanics, and, you know, he was focused a lot on the technical side of it. But you know what we got that we hadn't had before was the power game that he was able to create. And I think the flair, like, you know, look, I couldn't hit a ball like Karen Rolton or Belinda Clark, but I was the slow and steady turtle, that sort of, you know, hopefully got the job done within the time. But, you know, the power game that some of our players had, and the development through him as a coach is, you know, he just did an outstanding job with that Australian team, and a lot of personalities in there too. You know, we were very driven women, but we were strong opinionated as well. So, you know, to be able to get that balance in that group as well. But let me tell you, I remember Lisa Kitely colouring my hair on one tour. You know, she was sort of the hairdresser. And you kind of look at that now, you know, Sophie Molyneux's sort of taken over and she does all the haircuts. So all of that stuff was going on years and years and years ago. It's just that we didn't have Facebook to share it with everybody.
That's fantastic, and really interesting point you mentioned at the end there, that a lot of personalities, and whether they're egos or strongly opinionated, either way, they're strong women who, if you look at now, you got Lisa Kitely, one of the best, if not best, international female coach going around, Chris Matthews, CEO, Belinda Clark, just probably going to have a statue of her at the SCG. I think that says enough.
I hope they do.
And something similar that probably you in a coaching role was in New South Wales, like us playing in WA, always coming up against New South. It was just like pure intimidation. You look around, the body language, the energy, and no matter how much you talk yourself up, you could be coming off, I mean, I never had this personally, but speaking to a few of the others, coming off hundreds and a really good performance yourself, but you come against New South Wales and there's that aura about them. Yeah. How do you then, as either a coach or a player, manage all those egos? Because it's so difficult when everyone's kind of got their own agenda in some capacity. Like, is it a shared purpose? Is it like, how do you get all of that aligned in one direction?
I think, look, collaborative is the first word that comes to mind. You have to find that space where they can be themselves, but they can also be able to lead in the way that you need the group to go in. But, you know, the fantastic leaders that we had too, you know, there wasn't sort of too many clashes. You know, when you look at the Leah Poltons, the Alex Blackwells, the Rachel Haynes, Alyssa Healy, Elise Perry, but they were different as well, and they did have their differences. But I actually think that was our strength, because what someone was lacking in, someone had their strength in that part of it. So I think we will be, you know, I think the other thing is that just utilising the staff that we had around to bring that out as well. So, you know, some of our sports site sessions were around mixing the group up and ensuring that, you know, I think there was one day, and this is about being brave as a coach too, where we paired them up and 2 Australian players went together, and I saw 2 younger ones together, and I actually stopped them and I said, oh, do you guys mind swapping? And in that challenge, I could see their faces going, oh, you know, not happy, like, you know, because, you know, sometimes when you're challenged in these spaces, you want to be with people you feel comfortable with. So you need to be able to take them out of their comfort zone. But let me tell you, like that day when I drove home, I thought, oh, wow, you know, I feel like I've got a few holes in my back doing that. But I actually felt good, because when they actually came back to the group, this younger player that I had put with this Australian player had said a pivotal thing that I actually thought, oh my God, you know, sometimes as a coach, you just have to be brave. 7 months later, when we had our review with that young player, she actually told me that was her turning point. And wow. That just sort of sent, you know, I still get, you know, hairs on the back of your neck just come up, because, you know, whilst the Australian player didn't see the need to potentially look around and go with that younger player, for me to be able to be brave enough to do it, and we saw the result that we did, I'd do it all over again for the holes in me back.
That's fantastic. And relationships are so important. And I think underneath why they're important is the ability to allow each individual to be themselves. And it's a bit of a cliche these days, like be you, be yourself. But I think cliches are cliches because they're usually true. And in terms of different personalities in a squad, you might have in this situation, say, a younger player and an older player. The other way, someone who's a bit more naturally introverted and someone who's out and about, loud, party person or class clown.
You talking about me?
I'm probably the quiet one and you're the class clown over here. But how do you, in that case, go about helping those that are a little bit on the quiet side actually express themselves and be themselves in a bigger group?
I'll tell you what, one of the brilliant things that and this is quite early on in my coaching career as well, so I have used it with other teams too, where everybody had to give me something that they felt comfortable sharing with the group. right? Every single player. And what I did was just made a list of those things that people were doing, and at appropriate times throughout the season, they would deliver to the group. And there was this really quiet girl, didn't speak much in meetings, fantastic player, had been sort of seen at the next level as well, but just found it really hard to express herself in front of the group, got intimidated by the people that were around her. And I looked at her thing, and it was ballroom dancing, and it was hilarious. Like, so she obviously, outside of cricket, you know, she was very much into dancing and line dancing and all of this and ballroom dancing. She ran the best session ever. I actually literally had to go around. She had people so engaged that they were, you know, throwing things in and going, hey, let's do this, let's do that, you know, and sort of almost taking over her session because it was so much fun. And I had to walk past a couple of senior players and go, let it go, let it go. This is, you know, because I wanted her to have her time to shine. And she absolutely did. And, you know, from that day onwards, it was kind of like this growing of that player. And the spin-off from that was that when we went back into meetings and cricket things, she was able to come back in with a little bit more confidence because she had these people seriously eating out the palm of her hand. So, you know, little activities, you don't even think that something like that is going to create. And it blew me away with all the spin-offs and all the learnings that I got from that one activity by watching the players share something that they were passionate about.
That's fantastic. And in that situation, did she actually run like a ballroom dancing class?
We did a little bit of line dancing first. It was actually funny. It was in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It was a washout, right? It was in a rain-affected match, but the game hadn't been called off. And I looked at my list and I went, oh, no, we got to do this. We got to do this. Because you know, it's like when it's raining, everyone's like bored. Like, not everyone wants to all play the same board games. And I thought, oh, this is really appropriate. So she had them doing line dancing first, and then they were loving it so much. This session went on for longer than, you know, they only had to run it for 5 or 10 minutes. This session went on and on and on. And then it turned into ballroom dancing where she had them all paired up. Oh, seriously, I was in fits of laughter. It was just an amazing thing.
That's really brilliant. That's one of the best things I've heard. So that's great, where you've got two types, the introvert and the extrovert. The other two types that you see quite a bit, and probably leaning towards this one from what I've seen in my playing days, is overtrainers versus undertrainers. So you've got some that come in and have this need to hit thousands and thousands and thousands of balls. Sometimes it's useful. Someone like Elise Perry comes to mind, where I'd actually we'd start training at 8 a.m, be hitting balls, and I love hitting cricket. Like, I'm a biggest batting badger you've ever met. I could watch it for days, and I thought, like, no one loves batting more than I love batting. Anyway, hit balls. I'm like pretty cooked here. I've gone and got a coffee. Elise Perry's still hitting balls. But that's like, okay, it's lunchtime now. She's still hitting balls. She doesn't stop, but the results speak for themselves. And she actually loves that. On the other hand, you've got a few others in the group that are hitting, and it's a desperation. It's that need, and it's like, I have to hit balls. And I can't see any element of enjoyment in that. And then so there's the two types of kind of overtrainers, if you like, but then there's also those that might come in and are just a little bit talented, if you like, and riding that. How do you get that extra little bit out of them? You got to manage all of that in one giant group. What would be your approach in that situation?
Yeah, look, a lot of players come to mind, not in a negative sense, because, you know, like you say, every player is different. And as a coach, you're trying to strategize on what's the best way of getting the best for that particular person. And look, I think it's, if you've got a good relationship with your players, and let's face it, not everybody's going to be your cup of tea. Like, not everybody is going to link in with you. And I understand that. And I can be a scary person at times. So what I was able to do, I think, in the environments that I've been in, is to be able to use the other people around me as well. So if you're not using players, you might be using other coaches. And I've found that, you know, if there's a disconnect with me, because I'm a little bit like Elise Perry, I was like, wanted to hit 1,000 balls, like, you know, and look, you're absolutely right with her. I had a window view office that had the indoor centre, you know, and I would see Elise Perry come in pretty much at 9 o'clock and pretty much walk out at 5 p.m. You know, that's sort of what she would do. And that's me too. So sometimes you have that lack of understanding of what this person that doesn't want to have a hit, or they're appearing like they don't want to improve on what they're doing. And I think sometimes that's really, a player's got to find their way too. So, you know, if players don't need that hit, that's fine. Then, you know, I don't think you need to put them in that position. However, there's been times where, you know, we had a couple of games and a player got out the same way twice, in 2 games in a row, twice, and it was a camp weekend. And the next day we were having like a non-compulsory sort of a session. And I really felt like normally I would allow the player, you know, the players to sort of control that environment and go, no, I'm not having a hit today. I actually felt that this player needed to, because we needed some strategies on how they were going to approach this type of bowling to them. So what happened in the end, I think this all comes down to communication though, because you want to be able to utilise the coach that gets on well. So the session was ran there, but I was really specific in what I wanted him to work on with her as well. I said, I need her to have 3 other ways on where she can hit that particular ball and train her. And I actually wasn't visible in the session, but I did go and talk to this player afterwards, and I explained to her the reasoning why I did actually get her to train that day. On other occasions, I would be quite happy with, you know, if someone doesn't have to have thousands of balls like Elise Perry and they can still, you know, get their performances going, well, you know, I'm probably not going to push and challenge like I did with that player, but I really felt there was a need for it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it was really cool seeing probably the 2 best batters at the moment in Australia anyway, in Bunning and Perry. Meg was almost the opposite of Pez in that she's like, as long as it's quality and I feel good to go, I can then just go into the game and trust my instincts, and I'm happy with that. And it sounds like you're on the same path where it's each person to themselves, as long as it's useful. And what's useful and what's not useful is probably the key element. And something really interesting.
Players don't pick that up too. You know, sometimes players only know what they know too, and that's where I think like coaching is difficult at times, because you do have to have those tough conversations with your players when they're thinking that they don't need it, but there's a group of you that think that they actually do. You got to get on the same page.
Do you find that, like what you spoke about in the first place, of establishing those relationships and letting people do their passions such as line dancing helps though in having those difficult conversations?
Yeah, look, I think so, because you get to know people. Look, you know, I've been here in New Zealand. I've gone out and milked cows with one of our players just to sort of understand why. And I tell you, I must admit, this player said to me, she goes, "Oh, you have to get here at 5:30." I went, "What? 5:30 in the morning? In the morning or at night?" She goes, "No, the cows get milked at 6, so you need to be here at 5:30." I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like, you know. So I think sometimes when you live, you know, when you see what somebody's actually doing in their own life, then you do have that a little bit more empathy as to, you know what, I can kind of understand her coming to training and looking a little bit, you know, shabby and tired, because she's actually had, you know, this tough day. Like, it's not an easy job to do that one. But if I'm sort of not experiencing that with them, and it's not even that sometimes it's just that connection that you can have. Like, there was a younger player here after training, she asked me to drop her off on the way home. They are the best 10, 15 minutes of my week, just engaging with this player. Younger player, doesn't talk up a lot. And we just have this almighty chat that's not even cricket sometimes. It's things that they're doing outside. So you feel like you've got this sort of connection with them. You know, we had one of our New Zealand players in Australia a couple of months ago, and that's where I live when I'm not here in New Zealand. And she's was over there visiting family, but she was meant to go to Sydney and got sort of stuck in Brisbane, even though I said to her, "Mate, don't ever say you got stuck in Brisbane. It's a great place to be." But we were training at the National Cricket Centre, and she actually walked in there and went, "Oh my God." She was looking around and she's going, "This place is amazing." But for me, the connection was that I actually got to work with her one-on-one for 3 weeks before I then flew out here. Now that's very unplanned, but so I think the effort needs to be made, and sometimes it comes when you're least expecting it, that you learn something about one of your players, and you think, oh, I've actually got a bit of a connection, with this particular player. It doesn't have to be the cricket side either. It just has
fantastic.
to be authentic. It just has to be authentic. That's my opinion on it.
It's just a human before the athlete, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of New Zealand, so you moved over there and you're coaching at the moment, but vastly different in terms of the resources available to you. Sounds like your processes are still pretty similar. It doesn't cost anything to be a good human to someone else. It doesn't cost anything to give some time to other people. But, well, how are you going about dealing with the challenges that come from not having those financial resources behind you?
Well, it's also the access to the players as well, because I've gone back to the situation where they're all at work.
So you're going back to the start.
I've come full circle. I suppose in that I have vision of where I'd like to take this group, and and that vision is things that I'm sharing with the organisation, so that we can move in a forward step to sort of get the best out of these players as well. But instead of seeing players five times a week, I'm seeing them for 2 hours twice a week. So it's made me really savvy on the things, the dominoes that need to be hit first. And you know what, we can get caught up in doing all this, well, I'll call it stuff, but it's, things that, are they really making a difference? So it's made me think every time we go to do something, I actually ask myself that question: is this really going to make a difference? Is this really what this group needs right now? Because I get 4 hours with them. I want to make sure these 4 hours are well spent. And you've got the other added thing with the area that I'm in at the moment is that these girls are in Auckland, they're in Hamilton, so that's 2 hours away. And then there's Northland or Gisborne. We've got a player in Gisborne. We've got a player in the Mount Maunganui. So we're spread out. We're 4 or 5 hours sometimes away from some of our players. So what COVID's actually taught me is that we can actually connect as well, that potentially we weren't doing before. So those players that are 4 or 5 hours away, that don't come to a Hamilton training or an Auckland training that we run, we're managing them in other ways. I think we had our group throwing socks the other day and hitting balloons. So, when you hit a balloon, you can actually play a cart, a pull, you can use your feet, you can dance around. As long as you've got space, you're not going to break the telly or anything. And I've found it sort of, really challenging in that way, that it is a different group and they're not professional athletes. But I kind of look back to the comment that I said, that I played in an amateur era but trained as a professional. So that's what I'm trying to instill in these players, that when you're there, let's make this, fun, because I don't want it to be intense and not fun. And it's really, I suppose, professional in what we do, but sometimes it's out of the ordinary, like hitting balloons. Who would have thought? That wasn't in my plan at the start, I can tell you. But being able to do some. I mean, I've got this beautiful brick wall here that I was showing some activities where we were just hitting a tennis ball against it and doing catches against it. And I've got everybody else on the screen looking at all the different environments. This poor kid was in a little room that had just a bed in it. And she kept saying, "Oh, I've hit the ball. It's gone under the bed. I just got to crawl under and get it." And it was almost like watching a movie on my screen, with all these players trying to find ways on how they could keep their skills going. And the challenges that they had, then we had a challenge at the end where they had to hit off a wall and hit something else. So then they started having, and everyone was different because they had all these different environments. So I suppose I love strategy. Like I don't sit there and go, "Oh, we can't do that." It's too hard. It's impossible. And, my really, what we're sort of trying to instill in our group at the moment is it's about finding a way. You can sit there, something can be given to you and you can go, "Oh, that's impossible. I'm not doing that. Fuck that. Too hard. I can't go and buy balloons at the local store. Like, that's too hard." Or it's find a way, like get into that shopping centre and get your balloons or whatever it might be. And it's just about them finding sort of their way. And, you know, when people do find their way, you really don't know what they've gone through to get there either. And everyone's different. Like, you know, someone with their balloons might have driven to 4 shops before they got it. Other people might have rocked up and gone, oh, there's a line, I'm not going to bother with this. So we're really trying to instill, taking almost the cricket out of it in some aspects, and saying that, you know, when we're put in these situations like lockdowns, and also I want to acknowledge too that sometimes when it is impossible, that's when you're in a deep, dark spot, and no one wants to be in that situation either. And that's where I feel that we've been able to provide a lot of support to our players. And I must admit, I reckon I rattled off about 8 or 10 people that if things did get to a situation where they were impossible for our group, that if you don't connect with one person, here's another. We've got trained people as well, with New Zealand cricket as well as a sports psych and a leadership culture fellow that we use, and all our staff. You know, there's numerous of people. So it's not, sometimes people can't find that way too. And we need to be able to acknowledge that and help them in other ways.
The perspective is simply incredible. Like there's a whole number of things I want to pull on there, but to take the big picture view, like if you look at old school coaching, primarily fear-based. We can't do this. We've got to have structure, plan. Even going to coaching courses now, it's like this is your structure. This is a way to do it. This is how we want to teach. It's getting there slowly, but you bring an entirely different viewpoint. Like I can't even begin to describe, like starting from the start where it was that gratitude piece where you mentioned right at the very start, I've got a brother with a disability, but I'm so grateful for him. I had these friends around me, a front yard, a backyard, a roller, the joy and the gratitude piece. And it's almost seems like it's flowed right throughout your story. And now in terms of impacting others, where a lot of the barriers that people say, nope, that's not possible, are literally right now taken away from you. In that you're in lockdown, you don't have the financial resources, the time resources to spend with players, and the fact that you're able to still speak with the same gratitude and joy and purpose, if you like, in impacting people and just moving forward and just getting it done in whatever way you can. And sometimes when you can't, there's people around you. It's pretty incredible to see. And from that, like in terms of what you bring to coaching, what would you like to inspire the next generation of coaches, and particularly females, to get into the coaching world? How do you want to, I don't know, legacy, if you like, the legacy that you'd like to leave as a coach?
I think it's respecting where cricket is and where you kind of want to take it. I think that's something that I certainly embraced when I came in. Acknowledge where the game's at. Now let's do something about this and make it better. And even around the world, like, you know, I'm Australian, yes, I'm working in New Zealand, but I look at the women's game and, you know, when Australia are playing against some countries, it's like having a senior team playing an under 10s team. Now, that's not their fault. It's just the resources and, as you say, the finances and all sorts that are going on around the world. They're not in a position that Australia are. Australia are in a very, very fortunate position. I think England are close behind that. I think India are heading in the right direction. I'm full of hope for New Zealand as well. You know, I think seeing firsthand here, the structure and the organisations, they are really working hard behind the scenes to get their team in a position where they can be competitive. And that's what I think, just all doing our bit, but do something because you absolutely love it, because if you don't, you will not be able to sort of commit to it and be able to inspire the people that are around you.
That's brilliant. And we have kind of reached the final questions that we ask most of the guests. One of them you just answered beautifully, so we'll leave it at that. Lead with passion. I love it. The second one, which is quite relevant to, I suppose, what we're talking about in New Zealand or different parts of the world, especially upcoming with the Fair Break tournament that's coming up in May, is the concept of equality. And why is equality and doing all this extra work to help have more equality important to you?
I look at it almost from the other side of it and say it's just not nice to be not included. It's not nice to feel left out for me. Like I just think everybody deserves that opportunity, but you don't want to be handed that opportunity if you're not applying yourself as well. So I think there has to be, respect around that too, not just putting your hand up going, hey, I deserve this. And I've worked hard for this. But, I feel, a lot of times in my career with coaching, it's always been about, oh, Joanne, if you go and do a little bit of work in with the men's program, I'm sure you'll learn a lot. And I suppose my answer to that has always been, you know what, the New South Wales Breakers are actually a really good team. Is there any opportunities where maybe you've got some coaches, don't care whether they're male or female, where they can actually come into the New South Wales Breakers environment and maybe learn some things for themselves as well. So I think it's just that awareness. That awareness just needs to be loud and clear, I think. People need to be able to perform. You want to have that worthiness as well. And that's all people want when they're in an environment. They want to feel like they're worth their piece in the group that they're in.
And how would you define high performance?
Yeah, look, I think it's pushing yourself to the absolute limits. I think it's reaching what we call sometimes of reaching your ceiling. I think there's been plenty of players that come through the system and they've got all this ability, but they don't have the attitude. And what happens with an athlete like that, I find it very hard to call that athlete a high-performing athlete. They're probably a low-performing athlete as opposed. And I just think it's about reaching your ceiling and getting the best out of yourself. And the way you do that is through your goal setting and looking and going, you know what, this is where I am at the moment. This is where I want to be. There's a few gaps in here that I need to fill in. And a high-performance person will be able to identify those things and be able to nail them.
So would you say it's almost irrelevant what level you're at, what situation you're at, whether you can access nets or your bedroom or under the bed, you can still live your version of high performance?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be sort of on the field. It could be just something that you're doing as a group off. One of the other things that we're doing is S&C sessions online too, so there's other sprinkles of that. And also, I've asked a player to talk about goal setting, or we've got Olympic athletes coming in and talking about what they do. And it's one size doesn't fit all either. I think that's the really important thing, is that we are all different and we'll all find our way a bit differently. I kind of like to look at it like this, 4 runs can be hit with a beautiful pull shot, cracker, back over the bowler's head, bang, could even be a 6, not a 4, or through the covers, nothing better than hitting something through the covers. Or it could be an inside edge, but at the end of the day, it's a 4. So I don't really think it matters too much, sort of how we get there, I suppose.
Absolutely. I think I've made a career out of living on the edge, but on the edge of either side of my cricket bat.
They're bigger these days. They're bigger.
It's helped me significantly. And then how would you define success now? And has it changed since you were a little girl growing up?
Oh, look, I would define success now as the little wins. I think when I was younger, it was about the big wins and winning things and making teams. And, I've learned that success isn't just about the winning side of it. The little wins that you have are the things that make the biggest difference. And, some examples of that are, I've had players that you throw 1,000 balls to and they've played an on-drive and they play one in a game and they look at you on the bench and give you, and they've made 4 runs and they're like, to me, it's wins like that. It's even, I had a bowling session with Belinda Vakawira, and she had this enormous jump all the time. And creatively, I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to go the other way with this, because everybody was trying to get her to lower it, and that's what we were trying to do. And what we decided to do, I'd never done this before, what we decided to do was put a little cone down there. And I said to her, you've got to try and hit that cone in your gather. And we saw immediate sort of, the lowering of the foot. It was almost like she was jumping from her netball days, I think. But to look at her face when she was able to sort of progress through that, I actually remember giving her a high five that day. And you go home and you just have this sense of, oh, what a successful day that was. Belinda Vakawira's, jumped over a cone properly. It's like, and to me, they're the little things, they're the little things that make such a big difference to the players, and the confidence that you can give them from those little things. That's success for me.
That's brilliant. And our final question is, who is Jo at her best? Actually, a word that comes to mind, I think humble. I think I've never got too far ahead of myself. I've just wanted to be the best that I can be in whatever job that I'm doing. And I think humble really sort of stands out for me. I think caring as well. I really do care for an athlete, both on and off the field, and also the staff. I've had some amazing staff that I have learnt so many things off of, and really love sort of building relationships and working with them. And I think caring is got to be up there. And the last one for me is, I think, smiling. Like if I'm smiling, and you picked it up before, like if I'm smiling and there's passion about what I'm doing, that's when I reach my peak, I think. And you still got to learn. Like you never get to, it's like the mountain. You never get there completely. You're going up and down that mountain all the time. So yeah. That's utterly fascinated me. And as I said at the start, the whole, like, a really common theme for you has been gratitude. And 4 kind of pillars that I'm starting to, at the very start, I feel like I'm at the bottom of a mountain looking up at the moment. But what keeps coming up every time you go up the mountain is humility, gratitude, empathy, and authenticity as 4 big pillars. And you've just mentioned all 4 of them in your answer of who you are at your best, it's just fantastic to see. And I'll be honest, I remember being a little tucker playing for WA, coming up against the great New South Wales. See Jo Broadbent, or Brogsy as they called you, milling the sidelines, and I always thought, gee, she looks so scary. Like, I would not want to play for New South Wales. And I was like, gee, they're all, and I don't think it was necessarily you, it's just New South Wales things. You look at the big people in the bloody light blue kits just dominating everyone, and it's very annoying.
I'm still wearing it. Look, I've still got the light blue. I've got to see it.
It's like, she's on the dark side for sure. And then, but quite honestly, like, I've heard a little bit of you speak before, and this conversation, it's up there, one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done, in seeing your approach, the way you go about things. And it's absolutely, always wondered, was it a fear thing that she instilled, just fear in everyone? But it could not be more opposite. And for that, I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to chat with you. And I hope that you continue to impact, you continue to get lots of little wins. And I'm really excited to see the impact that you have on the world as you move through.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.